Welcome to our explainer. Today, we're talking about a crisis that's flying under the radar for most people. We're calling it the petrochemical squeeze. And yeah, it's a story that kicks off in China, but you're going to see how it could impact your life, and soon.
So let's just jump right in. When I say the words energy crisis, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's the price of gas, right? Watching that number at the pump just climb and climb. But what if I told you the real energy crisis, the one that could actually grind things to a halt, has almost nothing to do with the fuel in your car?
See, we've all been trained to think about crude oil in just one way: gasoline for our cars, diesel for our trucks. But for the entire global manufacturing system, the system that makes, well, everything, the real story is about the fundamental building blocks of almost every single product we touch.
And that gets us right into our first big idea here. For years, we've all been focused on the wrong crisis.
Here's what I mean. The common view, right, the one you see on the news, is all about fuel for cars and planes. The impact: higher prices at the pump. But the hidden reality, especially for a manufacturing giant like China, is about something way more fundamental: the actual inputs for the factories. And the impact there isn't just about price. It's about whether products can even be made at all.
So what exactly are these critical inputs? Let's take a closer look at manufacturing's most essential building blocks.
The magic word here is petrochemicals. These are basically just chemical products that are derived from petroleum. Now, you're going to hear some technical-sounding names like naphtha, ethylene, and propylene, but don't worry about that. Just think of them as the tiny molecular Legos that our entire modern world is built from.
And when I say everything, I mean everything. The plastics in your electronics, the synthetic fibers in your clothes, the adhesives, the packaging that your food comes in, even life-saving ingredients for pharmaceuticals. Petrochemicals are the invisible stuff of our entire lives.
And this is the absolutely critical part. China is by far the world's #1 consumer of these materials. That massive appetite, that dependency, well, it creates a huge vulnerability. And that vulnerability is now being triggered in a big way.
Which leads us straight into our next section, and it's a dramatic one: a total supply chain collapse.
Okay, just look at this chart. This tells the whole story. In 2025, a huge chunk, 41%, of China's refined product imports came from the Middle East. Fast forward to May of 2026, that number has collapsed to less than 1%. Not 10%, not 5%, less than 1%. It has, for all intents and purposes, vanished.
Now sure, total imports are down 11% from last year, and that's a big deal on its own. But that's not the headline. The real alarm bell, the thing that changes the whole game, is the specific collapse of that Middle Eastern share. A critical artery for their industrial machine has just been severed.
So the logical question anyone would ask is, wait a minute, why can't China just make its own? I mean, they have tons of refineries, right? And that brings us to the really fascinating part of this story: the refinery mismatch.
See, the problem isn't about their total capacity to process crude oil. They have plenty of that. The problem is all about the configuration of those refineries. Because, and this is key, not all refineries are created equal. Think of it like this. You've got two different types of refineries in China. The smaller, so-called teapot refineries are built to process heavy, lower-quality crude from places like Russia and Iran. They're optimized to churn out fuels like gasoline and diesel. But then you have the massive coastal mega-refineries. These were built to process lighter, higher-quality crude from the Gulf, and they are specifically designed to produce huge amounts of petrochemicals.
So what happens when that supply of Gulf crude collapses? It's the mega-refineries, the ones optimized to make the building blocks for manufacturing, that are starved of their feedstock. The teapots can keep making fuel, no problem. But the giant refineries that feed the entire manufacturing sector, they start to run on empty.
And this is the exact moment a problem inside China becomes a problem for the entire world. Let's trace this out in Section 5, the ripple effect.
It's like a line of dominoes falling over. First, the Gulf crude supply gets cut off. That means the petrochemical refineries start to starve. Pretty soon, you get shortages of basic plastics and fibers. That, in turn, puts a massive squeeze on global manufacturing. And the final domino to fall? The stuff you buy, consumer goods, start disappearing from store shelves.
And we're not talking about niche products here. Look at this list: electronics, cars, construction materials, clothes, medicine, packaged goods. Pretty much every single thing we manufacture has some kind of plastic component, and they are all at risk.
So, where does this all lead? It brings us to our final and honestly our most concerning question. Is this an unsolvable problem?
Here is the single most important takeaway, the thing that makes this crisis so different from a typical oil shock. Fuel has substitutes. You can generate electricity, you can switch to EVs, you can burn coal if you have to. But for the actual physical building blocks of manufacturing, there are no easy substitutes.
And there's a quote from our source material that just crystallizes this perfectly. You cannot make plastic from solar panels. You cannot make nylon from wind turbines. That's it. That's the hard, physical reality of the industrial economy we all live in.
This profound vulnerability is forcing a massive, and I mean massive, shift in China's industrial strategy. And that leads directly to the question we're going to tackle in our next explainer: is this crisis accidentally creating the world's very first electrostate? We'll see you then.